Hello YouTube, Rich from PCGamesN here, and we've had a lot of fun over the decades, you and I, haven't we? Talking about how Total War Dev's Creative Assembly have brought Warhammer's fantastical units to life. Today though, something slightly different, a legendary lord, and one with buckets of personality for CA to try to convey. This is the making of Luthor Harkon. As it should be, Creative Assembly's starting point when designing a legendary lord, and indeed practically everything else that we've discussed with their designers, is Warhammer lore.
So I guess their backstory is a huge influence on how we design them. And the first thing we do is really delve into their backstory, and from that we can abstract gameplay.
Luthor Harkon, the self-styled Arch-Grand Commodore of the Vampire Coast, might have one of the most colourful backstories in all of Warhammer, so Creative Assembly either had a lot to work with or were at risk of biting off more than they could chew, depending on how you look at it. Part of a tribe native to the hills around Lamia, where vampirism began, Luthor was sired by one of the first blood dragons, a vampiric bloodline that values martial skill. Centuries after the fall of Lamia, Luthor resurfaced when raiders from Norska made off with the cargo of a merchant ship from the Empire. Unfortunately for them, said cargo included Luthor's coffin. When their ship eventually crashed on the coast of Lustria, they all had a serious case of "you're undead now," and Luthor was very much in charge. He built a home for himself where he landed, founding an undead enclave that became known as the Vampire Coast. While exploring the neighbourhood, he came upon an abandoned lizardmen city, and while plundering it, triggered a series of protective glyphs that severed his connection to the winds of magic and scrambled his mind. So, like I said, lots to work with. What were the key points that Creative Assembly wanted to highlight?
So I guess mainly his madness was one of them, and then his lack of magic because of the madness. He's kind of a lord that in the campaign he doesn't have any spells, but over the course of the campaign his goal essentially is to repair his mind and get his spells back. His madness is kind of very influential in his campaign. It'll change his effects essentially, stats. He might now and then get a different spell, things like that. So it's really kind of a varied and different kind of campaign for him.
Luthor's madness runs right through his character, shaping not only his personal journey in the campaign, but also his distinctive role in combat.
As a team, we sort of came to the conclusion that because in the lore he is sort of separated from the winds of magic, we would try and go the other way, essentially. So rather than being just another duelist, what we wanted to do with Harkon was essentially make him an anti-caster lord, someone who specialises in combating enemy casters. So you'll send him after other vampire lords or slan mage priests or things like that, and he's just excellent at shutting down enemy spell casting, sort of increasing their spell miscast chance, reducing their cooldown and things like that, basically.
Now this was interesting to hear, as it shows that Creative Assembly are still capable of finding unique niches for new legendary lords, even though, as of the Vampire Coast and its accompanying II patch, there are now 50 of them in Mortal Empires across Warhammer 1 and 2. With only so many systems to work with, is it getting hard to differentiate new characters?
As more content comes out, it gets a little bit harder, but I think we're successfully able to deliver that sort of as we sort of progress. Like as you can see with Harkon, his anti-magic specialization. With Solostra, she's the first sort of ethereal caster lord that we've created. So there is still sort of fertile ground out there for us to sort of come up with new playstyles and new mechanics for our lords.
Luthor Harkon also has an uncommon level of utility in his toolkit, reflecting aspects of his background and perhaps also his scattered brain.
He'll hold his own for sure in a dueling situation. It depends on the matchup, I think, but he does have that mobility. He's got access to several different mounts, so he's able to sort of get around quite quickly and deal damage from a range and in melee. He might not be as good in melee as say Sigvald or people of that caliber, but he's got that sort of ranged aspect as well, so he can sort of fire on the move as well, so he can do a bit of harass if he wants to. So he's quite diverse in how he plays.
And, like many other legendary lords, but perhaps to an even greater extent, Luthor evolves throughout the campaign, his abilities changing not only as players climb his unique skill tree, but also as they pursue a storyline which, again, is unique to him.
I think there's kind of a lot of depth in each of the characters in terms of gameplay. So we have kind of things like all of their skill trees and things like that. So yeah, when we kind of design the character, we have to think not just as the character as he starts the game, but also what he might be towards the end. So yeah, like I mentioned, he can mend his mind, he can fix that and get his winds of magic back. And yeah, kind of throughout the skill tree, you've got to kind of develop a character all the way along, and kind of find things that fit the character in terms of gameplay, yeah, all the way through the campaign.
The well-received Vampire Coast reveal trailer, of course, drove a lot of hype for the DLC, and Luthor was its charismatic star. It's clear something's not quite right when he talks first to a corpse and then to the camera and then refers to himself in the plural, but I think his voice is also a huge part of it. How a character should sound is probably something that Warhammer creators Games Workshop never had to consider, since of course they make mute models. Does Harkon's voice carry their seal of approval?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, but yeah, we're always kind of in contact with them. They're always on board with everything we do. We make sure that everything that we do, that they're okay with it, basically.
Certainly I think it's a well-chosen voice for Luthor Harkon. It's quite nasal, almost snivelling, and yet it quivers at the same time like a hypertense guitar string. And I think it's this deranged quality that keeps it from feeling too comic.
Fortune favors the infamous.
Yeah, well, we got a lot of kind of different voice actors to have a go at him, and then we just decided to choose the one that we think fits him best, not only in battle, but kind of, obviously he's in the trailer, things like that. So yeah, wherever we think kind of suits him best. That we kind of wanted to make sure he was a little bit different. So obviously you have the Sylvanian kind of vampires, like the quintessential vampires who have that, like you described, very strong accent, and we wanted to make sure that he had a bit of everything. So obviously he's a pirate, he needs to kind of sound a little bit piratey, but not too much. And then obviously his madness is such an influence on his personality, and we wanted that to come across in his voice. So I think that's why he kind of sounds a little bit unhinged at times. Kind of the direction that we really wanted was that sort of unexpected craziness. So yeah, if you click on him in the campaign map, he might kind of just burst out and say something. So yeah, we really want to get that kind of effect of being crazy, but at times kind of also still a little bit there, kind of master of an empire, so a little bit of both.
Luthor's madness is well communicated at a physical level as well, with his twitchy animations. But there's one other touch that I also really enjoyed, and that's his sword, which he often holds downturned like a cane.
This little accessory that helps a lot selling his crazy personalities. And the animator tried to have different idols, one more fancy, one more power, one more crazy little old guy, like what's happening there. So I think on the animation you really try to have one anime per personality.
Presumably this must have been a fair bit of extra work.
Yeah, this one was a bit tricky because we didn't have much time for him. Or we kind of took the time to make a few more, maybe not as much as we would have wanted to, but we tried to do the best we had in the time they gave us.
Conveying Luthor's personality then has been a coordinated effort across several different disciplines: art, animation, sound design, gameplay design, and let's not forget the cinematic designers who threw in a lovely touch all their own, which the community seems to have really picked up on and enjoyed. That creepy smile halfway through the trailer. What were CA trying to accomplish with this exactly?
Yeah, we want to make sure that he comes off as a little bit unhinged. Kind of unexpected. So while he's kind of frantically trying in the trailer, as you saw, to put his mind back together, he is kind of one of many personalities, and any one of those might come out at any time.
So it must have been quite gratifying to see them pick up on that and enjoy it so much.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. We always love the trailer reaction. It's one of the most exciting parts of the job, to be honest, is kind of when you announce the DLC and then you get to see everyone's reaction to the trailer. It's great.
Personally, I really like what CA has done with Luthor Harkon. Remember, this is a character for which some old fluff exists, but there's very little new material outside of the end times, which obviously Total Warhammer doesn't follow, yet. There's also very little artwork, and nonetheless, in his animation, voice acting, and at every level of his mechanics, Luthor Harkon in Total Warhammer is one of the most characterful legendary lords we've seen yet, representing pretty much every significant part of his background while also being fun and distinctive to play. We hope this video gave you a useful insight into how that was achieved. Give us a like if it did, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. Did you enjoy Luthor Harkon too, or do you feel like something's missing? Are there any other legendary lords whose depiction in Total Warhammer you particularly enjoyed? Let us know and consider subscribing. We already have plenty of exclusive Total War content, and we'll have more in the future, as well as further good stuff on all things PC gaming. So we hope to see you again, but until we do, thanks very much for watching, and take care.